Oh no's, hellos, and welcome back to another videos. And today we'll be taking a look at the top 10 Scourge cards. And yeah, I hate this set. This is probably the set I'm going to hate the most. So why not do a video on the set I hate the most? Because this was the first time Storm was a mechanic. So this is basically the birthplace of Storm. So you guys might hate this list, and yes, there is a lot of broken cards on this list. So get ready for your salt shakers to just explode because you're going to have a meltdown. So let's just start off with number 10. And oh, would you look at that? It's a storm card. So it's Wing Shards. This is a 1 white white for an instant. Target player sacrifices an attacking creature and it has storm. So if your player was playing a lot of creatures and were attacking with them, this is the bomb because once they swing it all, it's basically like Settle the Wreckage but better. And it's 1 less mana. So the thing about Storm is it copies each spell that was cast before this turn. So that includes your opponent. So this can work both ways and your way. So that's why Storm is kind of broken, just because of that reason. And also because fast mana exists. So yeah. It's still a pretty broken card, not gonna lie. This was a sideboard against elves. And if you're ever dealing with elves, Wing Shard was perfect because it can get rid of all the attacking elves. That he was just casting a bunch of elves, all the attacking elves, boom, they're all gone. So it's a pretty good card overall. Not too shabby, but still broken. So let's move on to number 9. And in number 9 we have a cycle, and it's the Decree cycle. So for an example, a Decree cycle has a cycling ability where you can use its minor effect instead of its major effect. So you can pay 6 blue for a Decree of Silence for whenever opponent plays a spell, counter that spell, and put the deception counter on this. After 3 or more, sacrifice it. So, or you can cycle it to just straight up counter a spell. And by the way, this would be uncounterable because, well, it's very hard to counter a triggered ability. So yeah, it's pretty good. The Decree cycle also had cards like Decree of Annihilation, where it was really good in land destruction decks. And you could just cycle it to destroy all lands instead of the major effect. And of course, there was other ones like the Decree of Justice, which was used in Astral Slide, so pretty good overall. So yeah, not bad. And let's move on to number 8, where we have Dragon Storm. So yes, there's going to be a lot of storm cards on this. So having a spell named Dragon Storm, very hilarious. But it's a 9 mana, 9 mana spell. And you're going to see how this was cheated. Search your library for a dragon permanent card and put it on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So the way people abused this was with Spinerock Knoll and a land. And if you got 10 or more damage, you got the cast Dragon Storm. And basically, there was a line where you can put up Bogard and Hellkites and just swing for lethal, and that would win the game usually. And it was played in a standard, and it didn't get banned just because it was a niche deck, and people found there was 2 people that found out about this deck, and they used it to win a tournament. So kind of a cool, interesting backstory to this card. And yeah, it's still broken just because you can just cheat it. So yeah, pretty nice, pretty nice. All right, let's move on to something that's not storm and not cycling. Let's move on to some creatures now. And at number 8, no, 7, 7, Siegegain Commander. Oh baby, it's a gobbo. So Siegegain Commander is pretty simple. When it enters the battlefield, put 3 red goblin creature tokens on the battlefield, and you can pay 2 to sacrifice a goblin, and you can deal 2 damage to any target. So yeah, where would this be played? Well, in goblin decks. And it sees some play in goblin decks, but 5 mana is a lot for some reason, and not very many goblin decks actually run this card just because of that. It is good to get a lot of goblins on the board, but the mana cost is just way too high, and goblins demand a lot of just low land count, so hard to get a 5 mana spell out there sometimes. But it is good in control decks, and if the control player wipes the board, this is a good replacement. Because if they try to wipe the board again while you have a goblin, now you could sacrifice your goblins to deal 2 damage to any target. So, pretty nice overall, and it's just goblin, not something broken. But let's not look at goblins, and let's look at number 6, Wirewit Symbiote. And it's a 1-mana insect. For return an elf you control to its owner's hand, untap target creature, activate this ability only once each turn. So the great thing about this is it can untap elves, basically. So this is played in some elf decks to untap a lot of mana dorks. So this sees some play in elf decks in Legacy even, to untap your elves to get more mana and to get, Crater Hoof Behemoth onto the battlefield and just attack. So yeah, pretty good card and still sees play. So yeah, pretty nice, pretty nice. All right, and let's move on to number 5. And at number 5 we have Sliver Overlord. So there was a lot of slivers, I think, in this set, and I decided to include only this one. But this one is pretty cool on its own. It's rainbow color legendary creature Sliver, and it has search your library for a Sliver card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand and shuffle. So you can basically just get all the slivers in your deck if you can. And it's not even a tap ability, so it's pretty good. And then 3, gain control of target sliver, and sometimes that comes up, trust me. If someone's playing a changeling deck, you can steal one of their changelings. Oh my gosh. So yeah, and also if someone steals your sliver, of course you can take another sliver. This just sees some play in sliver decks in the old standard, but it also sees play still in EDH. Very popular commander, and I don't know why it's so expensive, but it is. So yeah, kind of a lot. Lots of money. But you know what else is lots of money? Number 4. Carnion Feeder. It's actually not that much, but yes, Carnion Feeder. So very interesting card I have on this list, but I'll tell you why this is kind of broken. This saw play in Hogak decks in the modern era. And Hogak, of course, had to get banned, but if you combine Altered Dementia, Hogak, and Carrion Feeder, these are basically the 3 trios that made the deck possible. And this was like kind of a pseudo dredge deck. And you could basically get 15 power with Carrion Feeder and Hogak combined because you could sack the Hogak to Altar of Dementia. In Carrion Feeder, there would be a Grave Crawler in your graveyard, keep sacking it, +1/+1, and you just have a huge board that your opponent just has to deal with. And it was a crazy deck. A lot of cards had to go, and Hogak was ultimately the one that go. So I put it on number 4 because really I can't count this card out because of its power with other decks. So I just put it on number 4 because of that reason. And it still sees play in some decks and even in some bombardment decks in Legacy, although that has kind of fallen out of favor due to the recent metagame in Legacy, but who knows? It could come back again to haunt the day. So a card, it's not a card to be overlooked. Trust me. And here we go with number 3. This is a very interesting card, and it's a goblin. How interesting is that? It's not interesting at all. But I like the artwork, it looks interesting. It's Goblin Warchief, for 1 red goblin. Goblin spells you play cost 1 less to play. It should say cast, but in this old wording, back then it was weird. And then goblins you control have haze. So the main importance was goblin spells that you play cost 1 less to cast. Okay, goblin spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. There you go, that's better. So yeah, this is basically kind of like a pseudo lord, but except they gave him all keyword abilities of haste, which goblin decks really liked because goblins needed to get out there really, really quick. So if you can pump them and also have a way to reduce the cost, this is basically a lord's card, and it was so good, and it still sees legacy playing goblins. Not It's even seen play in historic, so I mean in historic anything goes. Elves, goblins. I saw merfolk sometime. I mean, yeah, the tribes there are amazing, and I don't think this will ever get out of goblins decks because it's just really good because your goblins just need to have Ace, and if they don't, well, okay. I guess you're not going to get anywhere with that. It's a pretty good card, and I don't think it's going away anytime soon. Okay, and at number 2, we have Brain Freeze. Oh yes. So it's a 1 blue for a target player puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, and it has Storm. So, why is this broken, you might ask? Well, the problem is it's instant speed. So, you thought the best mill card ever was Tasha's Laughter? Let me tell you about this card. I think this card is broken because, well, you can use it to an opponent that's going out of control. Let's say they cast, like, I don't know, 3 spells. Okay, they cast 3 spells. Look at that. And you cast this, so this will count as a 4th spell. So you would make your opponent mill 12 cards for 2 mana. Isn't that insane? But the real reason why it's on number 2 is it's actually played in Legacy Underworld's Breach combo decks. And this is a good enabler for that because you can fill up your graveyard by having just lots of amounts of like stuff in your graveyard to feed to Underworld Breach. And you could storm off and win the game and actually use Brain Freeze as a win con to mill your opponent out. Or you can use the many lines it also has in Legacy, which I don't think I can get into because it's a really complex deck. So, and it shouldn't exist. I don't know why Underworld Breach wasn't banned in Legacy, or was it banned in Legacy? I don't know. This also sees vintage plays too in Underworld Breach vintage decks. So yeah, it's a pretty powerful card. I don't know why this card even exists. I think this is a most powerful mill card. I mean, 2 mana to mill 6 cards because Storm also says when you cast a spell. So that means even when you cast this spell on itself, it copies, which is just ridiculous. And I don't know why they worded it that way. So it's technically they mill 6 cards for 3. It's insane. I mean, yeah, we have a card similar that does you cycle at 2 mana, mills what like. Oh no, that still mills 3 cards, I think. Yeah, so this is still the most powerful mill card. So yeah, it's just ridiculous, and I hate this card honestly. But not as much as the number 1 card. And number 1 we have Mind's Desire, and yes, this is a broken piece of trash. It's 4 blue for a sorcery. Shuffle your library, then remove the top card of your library from the game. Until end of turn, you may play it as over in your hand without paying its mana cost. And it has Storm. Holy shit. Yeah, so this was actually the fastest card ever banned in Standard. This only lasted, I believe, 6 days. So not even a week. And the reason why this was the fastest ban in Standard because there was actually a deck in Standard called High Tide, and High Tide just got absurd amounts of mana using blue and other spells that would make your lands untap. So when you cast Mind's Desire with High Tide, you can basically cast your whole deck, and you can go for a blue Sun Zenith to win the game and, well, make your opponent draw all those cards. But what did they use? Stroke of Genius was the card they used to do it. And yeah, Mind's Desire is and should be banned forever. The only problem is it saw play in a standard High Tide deck, and Mind's Desire is actually not banned in a Legacy or Vintage. You can still play it. The problem with it is that it has a high bar gain, and the amount of spells you have to cast in order to make this worthwhile is spells that interact with the opponent. So the problem with Legacy and Vintage is a lot of cards in Legacy and Vintage are very disruptive. So you can hit a counter spell off of this or like artifacts, and it's just not good enough. So that's why Mind's Desire doesn't actually see play in Legacy and Vintage. But hear me out, this is still the number 1 card because of how ass this was in the old Standard and how much of a menace it was. And just the effect in itself, and you can produce like a lot of mana with this. It's just insane. And it's free casting madness, chaos. It's like a chaos-free casting spell. It's completely out of this world. It is too good, and I'm glad they banned it as fast as they did. So yeah, that is Scourge, and it's the worst set ever. I think it is. Tell me otherwise. But what do you guys think? Do you think these cards are just okay? Yeah, I would think the same thing too. So anyways, guys, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day or night, and I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Bye and peace.